It's been said that the Eightfold Path contains, all of the, I guess you could say, primary teachings of the Buddha, all encapsulated into one teaching. And it's not necessarily a simple, easy, one-verse teaching or anything like that. And there's been many, many books written about it. We used to do, we've done some extensive courses on it, 8-week courses, and for a while there, we used to do, we would take one of the steps of the Eightfold Path each, like the second Tuesday of every month, and so we would work on it for 8 months, and then we'd start it over again. We did that for about 3 years. That was quite a while back. But so we would devote, like a couple hours to one of the steps. And there is a way to use the Eightfold Path in meditation, and that's kind of what we'll look at, this evening. And I'll record the meditation, and if you want to, try to use it or something, it'll be on YouTube, and then I'll try to put it on Insight Timer as well. So if you want to check that out sometime. But prior to the meditation, just to kind of take a look at what we're working with, Eightfold Path is actually a part of the Four Noble Truths. In a way, the Buddha said that we suffer, and we suffer because of our desires. And he said there is a way out of this suffering, and then the fourth teaching on the Four Noble Truths is that the path, is the way out of the suffering, and that is the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is teachings of wisdom, morality, and what I call the practices. And real briefly, what they consist of is the very first one is skillful, or some people say correct, but I say skillful understanding. And I say skillful because if somebody was doing something and we'd say, no, this is the correct way to do it, it would be kind of like reprimanding them in a way. But if we say this is the more skillful way, then it's usually more accepted. And that's why I prefer to use the word skillful rather than correct. So skillful understanding is the very first step in the Eightfold Path. I call it steps because, we're taking steps on the path for hiking or something, or doing anything like that. And skillful understanding is the understanding of cause and effect. In other words, what we refer to as karma. And it's very important to understand that in Buddhism, if a person wants to say that they are a Buddhist or understand Buddhism, it's very important to understand karma, or cause and effect. And it has everything to do with the idea that we suffer, and the result of this we have these desires, I should say, and the result of these desires is that we suffer. It points to the idea that we do an action and there's a result of that action. And if we go through life wanting more and more, we have desires for more and more, we will suffer as a result. As we know, we can have everything that we want in life. We could have all the money and all the friends and the ideal car and ideal everything, and still have a degree of suffering because we want more. We want things to be different than what they currently are. And it doesn't have to be material things, it could be anything. So the other aspect of this understanding is the Four Noble Truths itself. And so I talked about the Four Noble Truths as a way to describe or to introduce the Eightfold Path, but it's also a part of karma, that we do suffer, and then the result of this, or this suffering is a result of our desires, the same teaching, and there's a way out of it, and it's through the practice, through these 8 things that we'll talk about. So with that understanding, it really, each one of these parts of the path is very important, and each one, it's almost like a limb where one is just as important as the next. So the next step is skillful thought. And some people say skillful thinking, but it is the understanding or the awareness of an importance of letting go, of loving kindness, and of compassion. Those three things. And when we look at those three things, they all encompass one ingredient, and that is acceptance, which is a big part of reducing this desire for wanting things to be different than what they currently are, or wanting more of something or less of something. So when we look at letting go, we have to have a degree of acceptance before we can let that thing go. Otherwise, it just gets sticky and bounces back. And I'm talking about letting go of anything. You know, whenever there's always something to let go of. You know, that's one of the things that we can look for in our meditation practice, or even in our spiritual practice. What else can I let go of? You know, to be freer, to be more liberated in this lifetime. And when we start understanding that, we see it as a big part of that is acceptance. Loving kindness. We do metta at the end of each meditation, a little metta practice, a couple of them actually. But loving kindness is unconditional love. In unconditional love, there has to be a degree of acceptance. We'll talk more about all these things within the meditation itself. And then compassion is when we have compassion for others and compassion for ourselves as well. But in that compassion, there has to be a degree of acceptance. We can't hold grudges against somebody and have compassion at the same time. So there has to be an acceptance of the situation, or of the personality of that person, or anything that we look at. Compassion, have compassionate wisdom towards ourselves as well. That's skillful thought, and those two steps are considered the wisdom teachings of the Eightfold Path. The next three teachings are morality. They are skillful speech, skillful action, skillful livelihood. Skillful speech, we're talking about refraining from lying, harsh speech, gossip, and using speech as a weapon, finding different ways to harm people with our speech, including emails and stuff like that. And using our speech in loving, very, very wisdom-orientated ways. The words we use are very, very important. They can harm somebody a great deal, and they can change the world. We see that. We see that in our politicians and the things that are going on in our society. But again, it's also what we're teaching others. It's also what we're writing in emails and things like that. So skillful speech is very important. Skillful action is what we could look at as the 5 precepts, something that's fairly common in Buddhism, the Buddhism in the area of morality. The 5 precepts are refraining from harming, particularly killing, insects or anything, refraining from abuse of alcohol or drugs, the mind-altering substances, refraining from stealing, and again refraining from telling lies, the part of the skillful speech, and then sexual misconduct, sex where there's maybe more than 2 people involved, or a minor, or somebody that we shouldn't be looking at in that particular way, in a sexual way. And those are the 5 precepts. Skillful livelihood is interesting, and a lot of questions come up with skillful livelihood. When we have a job where we are not helping others in a beneficial way, we should take a look at our work, what we're doing. A couple examples might be working in the area of firearms or weapons or things that harm people. Even into the tobacco industry or the drug industry in certain respects. We want to realize that if we are harming people maybe in the area of helping them with their addictions, which encompasses a lot of areas these days. If we're and the reason I say that is because a lot of our work we do is most of the work or the jobs we have is to help others in some way. Just about every job. Matter of fact, I can't think of a job that isn't geared towards that. And usually the more people that we can help, the higher that job will pay as far as revenue for us, or revenue that we get from it. So we're everything from washing windows to a surgeon or a lawyer, all these different things. But if we are helping people, some people that might be addicted to certain substances and we're involved in that somehow, we want to take a look at that. And if we are not enjoying our job and we're doing it for money purely, we certainly want to take a look at that. So our job is very important. I mean, we spend so much of our lives in our work. So the Buddha realized that. And his work was to teach, and I guess he liked his work, So those are the areas of morality. And then the next three teachings are what I consider the practice itself. The first one is skillful effort, then skillful mindfulness, and skillful concentration. Skillful effort invites us to look at the Dharma, particularly the 5 hindrances that we talked about last week, I believe. And the 10 fetters, these things that we have to uproot to make these stages of an awakening, of enlightenment. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. And if somebody remembers that, you might get a sticker. Just throwing it out there. And but the practices are something that us Western people really like. When we think of Buddhism, we think of meditation, and that includes mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of making our way through the world in a non-judgmental, with no judgments, no commentary, no decision on many of the things that we come upon. In other words, being in that presence, that still presence, as much as we can. Not only in our meditation, but certainly in our meditation, but outside of our meditation as well. To be very mindful of our actions of body, speech, and mind. In other words, be in the moment. Understand that this is the moment we have right now. Bring our mind into the presence. And then concentration has a lot to do with presence, but concentration that the Buddha was talking about is really the practice of meditation, where we concentrate our mind on our meditation object and then work at going through these different stages of concentration, these different layers of concentration known as jhanas. But he also pointed out that concentration is used for every aspect of meditation. There has to be some concentration in all types of meditation, whether it's insight or what we call vipassana, or purely concentration practices. So the way of using this in our meditation is in different ways, where we take a look at ourselves, sometimes through imagery, sometimes recall of how we've been using these steps of the Eightfold Path. Sometimes just taking a look at our lives and seeing how we're incorporating each one of these steps. And we'll go through them. We'll probably, I'll be spending about 3 minutes on each one, and hopefully then we'll have a little bit of silence afterwards, after the meditation. Since we got a late start, I will probably go a little bit over 8 o'clock, for the meditation. And so a lot of this will be guided, of course, and treat the meditation the best way that you can treat it in the moment. In other words, if you're not feeling like you're geared towards a guided meditation, use the silence. Just use the talking in the background. It'll still absorb into the subconscious. And otherwise, feel free to fully utilize the guiding. That's what it's for. And as I said, you can always come back to this meditation and use it again and again at the through the recordings, various recordings. Can I have a sip of your water? So, is everybody comfortable? Really nice group tonight. I feel good about this one, for a change. No, I'm kidding. I think it's a good group. The last group last week was very, very quiet. It's like any questions, it was like, no. And close the eyes. Take a moment and thank yourself for being here this evening. Meditation is a very powerful practice in that we learn a lot about ourselves. And when we learn a lot about ourselves, we learn a lot about the world and everybody else in it. The Buddha understood the importance of meditation. He understood how it can slowly and subtly change a person. There are many benefits of it, from clarity of mind to stress reduction, and to pointing the way to the present moment, and to be resting in this presence, giving us a clear idea perhaps of what nirvana is. Nirvana being the highest realization for a Buddhist. Called full enlightenment. Where it's the end of karma, the end of the attachment to our actions. And so the result is that there is nothing to be reborn back into. And that is, of course, if we choose not to, according to the Mahayana tradition. the way of the Bodhisattva. And when the Buddha talked about the path, he talked about the Eightfold Path in such a way that he really felt that these teachings were the way for a person to use these teachings for contemplation, and actually to use them for a way of life. Because they not only involve meditation, but they also involve aspects of wisdom and morality, which are very important for our lives. And I think perhaps it was Ananda that actually gave him a number and an order. Ananda as being Buddha's assistant, and the person that actually wrote down these teachings. But the 8 teachings of the Eightfold Path, these steps, are something that we can put to memory. They're quite easy to do. The first 2 teachings are understanding and thought, and then the remaining teachings, the remaining 4 teachings are, they spell the word sale, S-A-L-E, speech, actions, livelihood, and effort. And then the last 2 teachings are mindfulness and concentration, something that's easy for us to remember. And so we can still bring our attention to the breath and use the breath in this meditation. I'd just like to invite you to think of your knowledge in regards to cause and effect. In other words, to karma. And think of some of the actions that you did today that might have a lasting result. Maybe something good that you did for somebody. Even a kind word that might have put a smile on somebody's face. Maybe you said something nice about a person, about the work they did, or you complimented them in some way, and how that made them feel. Kind of help that person out for that moment in their day, and maybe they passed it on. Maybe they were aware enough to realize that that compliment helped me, and I'll send it on to somebody else, compliment somebody else, and on and on. These are just examples. Think of the many people that you helped in your work today, that helped to make their life a little bit easier. Now think possibly of the repercussions of something that you did that wasn't so maybe wise, we could say, something that you might even regret, and the results of that. And perhaps most of all, think of any kind of greed or desire that you had today and what the result of that might have been. Wanting things a little bit more, a little bit better, a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer, a little bit tastier, a little bit fresher, all on and on, all these little desires that we had. Most of them very very normal and very habitual in a way, but nonetheless desires, and then the results that could occur from those desires. And if we see those results as any kind of suffering or any kind of stress, we might be seeing it quite clearly. The other area of skillful understanding is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, which is just that we suffer, and we suffer because of our desires. The Buddha said that there's a remedy for this, and that remedy is the awareness and the understanding of the 8 steps in the Eightfold Path. The second step of the Eightfold Path is skillful thoughts or skillful thinking. This mental activity, the frontal cortex of the human brain allows us to direct it towards areas, and in some areas it can be very, very beneficial for us to look directly at the process of letting go of beliefs which we feel we're 100% right. And studies show that these strong beliefs we have, most of them change. That our beliefs change, but at the moment we're unable to bend. So we feel that we're 100% right. And what if we could let go of some of those, or just see them more clearly through that aspect of letting go? Maybe there's material things that we should let go of, or relational things that we should let go of. Many times there's just simple things that happened in the past that we know that once we make our mind to see it clearly and then let go of it, like we're kind of washing our hands from it, it feels like taking off that proverbial backpack. We feel 100% lighter than we did. So some things that we let go of are very noticeable, and noticeable in such a way that we know that we should let go of them, and perhaps let go of them a long time ago. And other things are more subtle. But to know that there's always something that could be let go of. The other aspect of skillful thought is loving kindness. How we can direct the mind towards unconditional love towards all beings, all people, particularly ourselves. Once we learn to love ourselves, then we can love others. Once we love others, our heart opens up. We feel as if we're being reborn in the world. It changes every aspect of our lives when we live a life of love for all beings, all situations even. We begin to appreciate and be grateful for every moment in life. Another area of skillful thinking is compassion. Compassion for others, even compassion for ourselves. To realize that people are suffering in the world, and in many ways our job is to help ease them of that suffering, at least notice it. Compassion isn't necessarily sympathy for another. It's compassion can be very wise and very understanding, in that we can learn to make the right steps, have the right thoughts, skillfully carry out what we have to carry out in order to help others without being absorbed in any kind of suffering or taking on any kind of suffering. So we can ask ourselves, when's the last time that we noticeably let go of something? When's the last time that we practiced loving kindness towards others? When's the last time that we showed compassion for other beings and for ourselves? And skillful speech is an area of morality that can be very, very important for us to understand. We cannot take back some of the words that we've said, although we would like to. We can apologize, we can use further words to kind of cover them up, cover our tracks. So we have to be very careful. Words can harm others, words can help others. Think back to some of your conversations that you had today. Was anything said unskillfully? Did we use the words to manipulate something or to harm somebody? To somehow change things more in our favor, or to kind of build ourselves, our egos up, put ourselves on a pedestal a little bit? When's the last time we lied? When's the last time we told a little white lie? And when's the last time we gossiped about somebody with another friend? Said something about somebody without allowing them to defend themselves because they weren't nearby. And when's the last time we said something kind to somebody that really helped them out? Or that we gave some kind of a talk where we helped inspire somebody to do something great? Or that we just simply told somebody that we love them? His words can change the world in so many different ways. We see this throughout history. History is full of words, speeches, talks. Skillful action is generally referred to as actions of the body, but also actions of speech as well. In other words, refraining from lying, but also refraining from taking what is not ours. Not stealing could also have to do with very subtle things like being honest on our taxes or not taking that dollar bill that we found underneath the restaurant table, or these types of things, very subtle. But they can be also very, very noticeable by ourselves. Skillful actions is primarily not harming anybody, and knowing that when we do harm somebody, we harm ourselves. This is again a part of karma. Skillful actions also not heedlessly using drugs or alcohol, and being very careful not to practice any kind of sexual misconduct. And skillful livelihood is us taking a very careful look at our work. Does our work cause happiness for ourselves and others? Are we benefiting the world in some way through our work? Are we doing our work in such a way that if we didn't even get paid, we would still be doing it? All things to think about. Does the work we do harm anybody in any way, including ourselves? Or is it purely beneficial? Skillful effort is the understanding and the study of the Dharma. The Dharma, in this case, are the teachings of the Buddha, but also the teachings that we can apply through our own practice in the area of insight. The Dharma is the truth. It's something that is the truth for everyone and everything. It's also the teachings of the Buddha, the Buddha Dharma, and this includes the understanding of the 5 hindrances and the 10 fetters. 5 hindrances, we can understand these as the negative states of mind that cause unhappiness for us in meditation or outside of meditation. They can throw off our concentration, they can throw off our joy in life. And they are desire, ill will or aversion, restlessness and worry, drowsiness, or what is called sloth and torpor, and doubt, just the opposite of faith. And when these 5 hindrances are studied and understood, they can change a person's life and their practice. These are negative states that we all experience. They have everything to do with the past and the future. They have everything to do with worrying and fear and anger and wanting things to be different in some way. The hindrances are these areas where a once returner or a stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and an arhat make their way towards the end result of the Buddhist practice. And these are all areas that we can look at in our practice as meditators, as practices, spiritual beings, to kind of see where we're at in our practice. These things can be contemplated on and used directly in meditation. And even right now, we can ask ourselves, what mind state am I experiencing at this moment? If we're noticing any of the hindrances, we can bring our attention to that and ask why, and apply specific remedies against those, applying the opposite. And skillful mindfulness and skillful concentration are the practices of meditation. The Buddha asked us to practice and understand the present moment, to rest in this present moment, and to notice that we are creating our own difficulties in life. And that this has everything to do with karma as well. So when we're resting in the present moment, our mind is not in the past or the future. And we can understand our true nature. And everything seems fine in the present moment. This is an area that we can rest in. We notice the mind wandering away from the present moment. And we bring it back. In other words, we bring our attention back to the meditation object, which is a representation for the present moment. We do that again and again. Eventually our concentration becomes very sharp. And we find ourselves resting in our meditation practice without any of the hindrances that we earlier discussed. No desire, no ill will, no restlessness and worry, fatigue or doubt. And so for the next few moments, we'll practice this concentration, this mindful practice of resting in the present moment. And keeping in mind that any of these 8 steps of the Eightfold Path can be used for contemplation. But to dwell on those means to simply contemplate on them by themselves, not to let the mind wander off. This is a contemplation practice that the Buddha talked about. It's the way of studying the Dharma. We can still use the breath, focusing on the breath. If something comes up, we compare it and relate it to some aspect of the Eightfold Path. And that's why it's very important to memorize and know the Eightfold Path well. And that's when it becomes very beneficial, and it's a wonderful teaching for us as meditators. If something comes up, we compare it and relate it to the Eightfold Path for a few moments, then we come back to the breath, come back to that presence, come back to our true nature. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. And may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or difficulties that we might face in life. Thanks again, everyone. So the theme, of course, was the Eightfold Path. And as I mentioned a couple of times, it really is important to, try to memorize what it is. And you can, look it up online and find all sorts of stuff. But I think the best book on it is, again, one of Bhante Gunaratana's books called 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness. It's very, very clear. The first time I ran into the Eightfold Path, there were some things I didn't quite understand about it, and it wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't very clear for me until I actually started reading that particular book. And of course, teaching it helps too, and memorizing it, that type of thing. But it does, it's really good for contemplation. And again, contemplation is a part of meditation that doesn't get talked about a lot, but what it means is to take a subject and place our attention, our focus on it, not let the mind go outside of that, not let the mind go outside into the past or future, but just to stay on that subject. So if we were looking at karma, let's say we wanted to contemplate karma, we would look at karma knowing that we are, in this present moment, in this presence, and looking at karma from the aspect of what, how did karma affect my day to day, or how did karma bring about, some things that unfolded in my life or in somebody else's life. And so it seems like we're going into the past and going into the future, like something that happened that caused a result. But all of those results are present moment results, the effects of these causes. And the causes are something that happened in the past, but we just want to see them as something that happened, or they could be happening now, something that we're doing now, and it could cause something in the future too. But we want to make sure that we know that we are looking into the past and looking into the future in this present moment. So it's just an awareness that we are very present, we're looking at the past now, and we're looking at the future now. So all of this can be contemplated, and like I said, the Buddha encouraged us to do that kind of practice. It's not talked about a lot, and it can be still mixed in with our mindfulness practice, where the mind goes off into these things, but we still just temporarily look at them and then come back to the breath, come back into this presence and sit in that presence. Something else comes up, we relate it to whatever we're contemplating. Or we can relate it to the entire path, the entire Eightfold Path, such as morality, wisdom, and the practice of meditation. So there's different ways to practice it. When we contemplate it and really begin to use it in our life, we get each one of these steps. We have to have each one of these steps memorized and understand what they mean and how they affect us in life. So start memorizing if you don't have them down already, right? And if there's anything I can ever do to help you with that, I'm more than willing to do so. But you can just, if you're not very familiar with the Eightfold Path, just look it up online. Start reading about it. It's a very, very good material. Questions or anything?
I like that acronym. I never heard to do that before. Do you do
SAIL?
once more for everybody to help with the memorization? So it's
It starts. The first two are UT, like UT phone home. I don't know. UT. And then the word sale, S-A-L-E. And then the last two are mindfulness and concentration. So the key is that sale in the middle really helps.
Mm-hmm.
So UT, understanding, thought. Sale is speech, awareness, livelihood, effort, and then mindfulness and concentration.
Excellent. Yeah.
That's the 8 steps. I have to use acronyms, otherwise I would never I would never have get anything down. That's the wonderful thing about the Buddhist teachings is that they're all numbered, and they're very easy to relate to, and they're used for teachings, used for life and everything. And I'm almost certain it was Ananda, that came up with all these numbering systems. The 5 hindrances, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 10 fetters, on and on and on. 7 factors of enlightenment. The 10 commandments. No, that's something else.
I think he mentions Vipassana and another type of meditation. Is it samadhi or?
Was that email from you that you're?
No,
Oh, okay.
I didn't send an email yet.
Okay.
And I forget the terminology.
Samatha is probably.
Samatha,
Yeah, samatha is concentration.
Okay.
It's
Is that the jhanas?
Yeah, it's all jhanas are. Sometimes concentration is called jhana practice or jhana. Sometimes it's called samatha. Sometimes samadhi. So all these different names are used for the concentration practice.
Could you just give a brief sketch
As what?
Concentration meditation?
Yeah,
entails?
if in concentration, when something comes into our awareness, we don't want to pay any attention to it at all. So it's in that regard, it's completely different than like Vipassana or insight meditation, which is mindfulness based. Because in that practice, when something comes up, we want to pay respect to it. Like we want to take a look at it. But we don't want to dwell on it, but we want to take a look at what is this thing coming up, why is it coming up, and then we want to come back into our meditation object, and that's really the healing behind that kind of practice. Because if something comes up again and again and again, then we know that it's a habitual pattern that needs some special attention of some sort. Those are the things that derail us, so to speak. But if it's just something that comes up, like a sound, we notice that a sound, or anything, like a thought, thought will come up. Like last week we looked at thoughts from, was it last week? Maybe not, but we noticed the thoughts from the past and thoughts from the future. So we're kind of dividing up thoughts in such a way that we're noticing whether they're, future-based or from the past, but we're still coming into that presence. The reason we do some of these things is because we can see where anger comes from and where fear comes from, and these different things. And like I said, we kind of like we're paying respect to these different things that arise in our attention, in our awareness. But we're coming back to the breath again and again to get a fresh start. In concentration, samadhi or samatha or jhana, these different names for it, we don't want to pay any attention to any of that stuff. We are just focused. Our intention is to stay with the breath, and our intention is to do that in such a way that we want to go deeper and deeper and deeper into concentration. It's not an easy practice, and it takes more time. I would say if somebody is really serious about concentration practice, maybe in a couple hours a day of meditation. Because the mind has to fatigue of all these things coming up, because we're so used to it, So it kind of like fatigues so anything that comes up is way in the background, and it doesn't affect our concentration. So we're really able to sit with the breath or use whatever our meditation object is. And the first thing that we notice is that we are very, very present. We're in that present moment. We understand it. We're very familiar with it. The next thing we notice is that the hindrances are not there. So there's no problems, basically. There's no problems in our life. So it's very joyful and very, very blissful. And actually, these factors come in. There's bliss and joy. Our thought patterns completely change. We have almost like an absence of thought, but we can set our thoughts on something, and it just stays there. So in other words, our mind isn't wandering all off. It's just very, very still. Very, very, it feels very powerful almost. And then also we can lay our attention on something that'll stay right there, just stick right there. And then as we get into that, we can sit in a state like that for a long, long time because we don't notice the body at all. It's not a factor. Like if a joint hurts or something like that, we wouldn't even notice it. It just doesn't matter because it's all mental, but it's all concentration. And these factors, like the joy, there's like a joyfulness and a blissfulness. The factors are joy, blissfulness, applied thought, sustained thought, and a single-pointed concentration. These are the factors. When these factors start falling away, we actually go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into concentration. So the first factor, I'm not going to get too far into this, but the first factor that falls away is joy. And why would we want joy to fall away? Because it's energetic. It keeps us at this level. It's like, oh, this is great. That kind of thing. After a while, it's like, we'll let that fall away, and then we rest in this blissfulness. Like, oh, now I'm really getting somewhere. And a lot of times we mistaken this jhana for enlightenment. And if we're not prepared for it, we will probably dismiss the whole thing, come right out of it, dismiss it, and go, I don't know what that was, but it was neat. And but if we were aware of these jhanas, we go, okay, I think that was jhana. And then we recreate the exact scene, everything exactly the same, so that we can do it again. And then again and again and again. And after a while, we get very good at going into that jhana. Then we can go even deeper and deeper and deeper. That's the jhana practice. The first time I experienced it was 3-hour meditations we were doing. So it does take some work. They have in Burma, the country of Burma, they have like a month meditation retreat where there's really no teachings or anything. You're just in a little hut, just meditating all day long. And then you have meet with the teacher, and they'll say, "What's your experience?" And you kind of report that I had this experience, and he might say, "Well, that's jhana. Yeah, you're doing good. Now do this, now do this, now do this." Or he might say, you're still in a certain area of concentration. So our concentration is momentary concentration, where we're on the subject or the object, and we're off, on and off and on and off. And we do that all day long. And then from there, we go, we have access, I'm sorry, it's access concentration, where, and it's called access because we are accessing that point, getting close to that point of jhana. And that's when we are very, very present. And that's why I talk about this still presence all the time. We want to be able to sit in that and rest in that still presence. That's access concentration. And when you start meditating and you get in that access concentration a lot, come and see me. We'll work on some things. And then after access concentration is absorption, and that's when we start getting, these absorptions are states of jhana, deep concentration, where the hindrances are not there. No desire, no anger, no fear, no restlessness and worry, no doubt, and there's energy. So it took a little while to answer your question, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And the best book on that topic is another Bhante Gunaratana book called Beyond Mindfulness in Plain English. Any questions at all from anybody?
So, Anapanasati.
What is it?
A-N-A-P-A.
Anapanasati.
Oh,
Anapanasati.
Anapanasati, yeah.
Anapanasati.
Anapanasati. Mindfulness of breathing.
Okay.
Mindfulness of breathing.
Different than concentration.
Well, concentration can be a part of that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are some instructions that the Buddha gave, and when he gave those instructions, I think a lot of those people were practicing concentration. Because it was back when that was a much more popular practice, I think. But mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind states, and mindfulness of the dharmas, which would be like that contemplation. This is the best night of the week for me, and I appreciate you coming. So, one of the best nights. So thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.